Fruits of your labor.
Fruits of your looms. Fruits of your looms. Oh, we're recording.
Budget workshop for the town. Please join me in our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. So let the record reflect that there is no public comment tonight. All of the council members in attendance. Budget presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to stay in one spot. Recording right now. This is different than other workshops, and the reason I say that is because at this workshop, you actually make a decision. You make a motion and approve, and those three motions will be great presentation. So this is a workshop where you're just trying to make some policy decisions based on public input or a different issue today. But today's different. It's the budget workshop, and a lot of municipalities call the workshop is trying to work out the exact budget and get everything ready for the actual hearings. So if you recall a meeting, a hearing, or anything else, then people start getting that confused, which is required to do with such a. So that's why it's called a workshop. But for again, the purpose of intent and our mission is always not electric, is preserving the level of service and quality of life that the town residents and our customers custom, all while maintaining the town's financial viability. How do we get there? We do conservative estimates of revenue, control spending, better planning, move a little bit, I think it's my speaker, and we do better planning. Here you can see, since 2008, our village rate was all the way until it was now. You can see that the change was in 2017, 2018. That's when town council took out the wire cost in the general budget and did an assessment, and also made some commitments to parks and recreation, potable water, multimodal path, and a commitment to roads. Here's how we compare to other municipalities in the Orange County area.
I think we move it closer in this way.
Move it closer.
Yeah, it was doing that the other night. Yeah, there's just a certain spot. It's a little too far away.
All right, I'll put like a circle or something. But anyway, it's double-edged sword when you say that you have the lowest. You guys can hear me, that's too loud. Can you hear me on the?
Yeah,
Anybody on?
no, there's nobody in.
Well, by being the lowest millage rate in Orange County, it's a double-edged sword. You know, some people think it's feathering your cap, you know, you're doing great, you're making sure that you're operating underneath your current village. But it can be also a deterrent because you have that self-revenue generating system in place when you go to look for more monies. If you're going to go to the federal government, you're going to go to local government, or if you go to the state and you ask for monies for water improvements, wastewater improvements, road improvements, they're always going to ask you, what are you doing as a local municipality on gaining those funds? And then when you sit there and brag about how low your millage rate is, they might say, well, listen, you have plenty of room in the millage rate to go ahead and increase that millage rate to gain that capital in to do some of those projects. So when we do go to those different jurisdictions, that is one of the arguments that we have to overcome. But luckily, we've been able to tie it into HMGP grants, working with Southwell Water Management, and dealing with mostly environmental and disaster recovery projects. But again, you can see here again, we're at 3.7425, and then we have garbage, fire, and stormwater assessments. And when we see, is it Apopka? They're at 4.1876, and they have a stormwater assessment. And the reason I point out Apopka is because they have their own utility. Usually they're lower than us, and last fiscal year they're actually more than us. Typically, when you have a utility, you can take some monies from your utilities, offset some of the costs of your general. And I'm guessing because of some of the projects that have going on, or because increasing in population and projects, they had to increase that millage rate to 4.176. But when you take into account our garbage, fire, and stormwater assessments, we're probably at around that level. So the estimates of taxable value, again, taxable value is not what your property is assessed at, meaning that what real estate value is. It's what Orange County property appraisers estimate your house at a taxable value. And that estimate came in at $176,281,334. You can see the comparison from last year, where we're about $81 million more than what was assessed last year. That's not only to the increase in the value of homes, but also the addition of homes in Estancia and some redevelopment that we had in the town of Windermere. So what are we asking for you to do tonight? We're not asking you to increase the millage rate. Now that's different than increasing taxes, because the rollback rate that was approved back in, I think it was Charles Chris years, which they actually debated tonight at 7 o'clock, was in the truth of millage. You have to show that anything above what you received in revenues last year, even if you keep the same millage rate, is still considered a tax increase. So even though we stay at the 3.7425, which generates about $200,000 more in revenue, that's considered a tax increase because it's over what the rollback rate would be. So you generate the same amount of money as you had last fiscal year. And the max allowable millage rate that we do is 3.7892. But you can see the difference here is about $40,000. So the political heat of you increasing the millage rate is probably not worth the squeeze when maintaining the existing is typically what happens, as you can see in years past. So when we do the estimated revenues, we look at various factors and revenue sources. And we've been very conservative with the estimates. We usually, when I first got here, and what is bad practice is some people just used either the CPI or they just went ahead and added in the 3% allocation factors from all the revenue. So all the revenues always show that they're going to be increased. That's not the case. There's some anomalies that are in there. There's some reasons why you might have received miscellaneous funds one year from a payback, or you can see how some of the changes in society as far as how do we interact changes some of the tax income that comes in. But we have a spreadsheet where we looked at the last 10 years, and that's what I've been incrementally doing since my tenure here. So we're allowed to get an understanding of where we're at. And of course, we're still in the COVID era, and I guess now the monkeypox era. But we're trying to do what we can as far as staying conservative, because I don't want to come back to you in our April mid-year report and say, by the way, we overcalculated, we overestimated, now we have to make some budget cuts. And we never want to be in that position. So if there's any projects that we can hold off until April, so we're not having to do that, we typically do that, but I haven't seen us do that in quite some time. But for, I believe, this fiscal year, we had to put a little pause button on the payment management. Department of Revenue, they coincidentally don't give us estimates until pretty much the budget is done. They were able to give us some of the estimates, and the estimates they provide us were actually higher than what we estimated them to be. So it shows that we are being conservative. You can see the option gas tax went down, then went back up. With cars becoming more fuel efficient as it continues to go down, that's going to be argument from Orange County too, when you're trying to have the least sales tax initiative passed. But I do agree with that. That is a revenue source that needs to be done to get more efficient. Utility tax we do. That is something that has increased, and that increase not only with the added customers and a slight increase in services, but also we entered into that new agreement, which is why the franchise fee because we were at a lower cost, and then we were not only for the favored nations clause, which means that I get the same rate from somebody else negotiates a better rate, but they had the wrong amount of customers for something. So we did audit, we're like, oh, by the way, I missed out on these, and missed out on those for a couple of years. So we started. Water, again, that's increasing with the amount of cold water systems that we're putting in, that are going in, and also with the constant development and new redevelopment. I do believe that's going to go up once we start putting in, hopefully going to be putting in next fiscal year, this fiscal year. Liquid pop and gas is the same thing. It's always increased. Communication service taxes. This is one that has always been attacked at the legislation level, and that's because of the lobbyists that, White House, Spectrum, Verizon, all the telecommunication companies are going after this revenue source. It was going down, but now it's because they're bundling and providing all this great bundling packages and stuff like that. But now you're seeing a huge increase, and actually, the communication service tax that we anticipated this fiscal year is lower than what we were anticipating. So that's always a tax right now that we see going up pretty fast with the way that technology is going. And that's what I was talking about, that societal impact to your budget that you wouldn't see in 2016 because everything was bundled, everything was more cable, and now all streaming services there. Building permits, again, you see that huge increase. We did see a little bit of a dip, and you see us probably stabilizing at around $200,000, and that is an 80-20 split. Back in 04, 05, so 2008, before the crash occurred, there's municipalities out there that were making money hand over fist, and what you're not allowed to do is make a profit. They were, and they started getting lawsuits from water builders because they were doing. So that's one of the positive of what we're doing is that we split because there's that cost as an actual cost of the tech that we're using, and parts from the administration level. Those that do everything completely in-house have to do that justification of their devices to make sure that it is going with times and with the amount of permits that they're allocated. The franchise fee for duplicating has been increasing that because customers that do negotiate franchise fee. Absent sales tax, we have some bump in last fiscal year. We see probably a little bit of a bump this next fiscal year. I think I increased it by about $38,000. Even though we have the tax holidays from back to school and the hurricane tax holidays, it still doesn't put on the screen when it comes to our tax. A lot of other jurisdictions have a diversification of tax bases. We know commercial and residential. So usually they're having to figure out, well, ours is pretty much 90% residential. So that's the reason that you don't see the highs and lows or huge impacts as far as. But with the current millage rate, this is what we generate as additional revenues. And again, reduce the building permit fees from 300,000 to 275. Zoning review fees, and that's something that is money in, money out as far as make the building pay for itself. The only time that we pay for that money is when we ask Brad to do something kind of like the setback for the pools, something like that, and that's a charge that's paid from the town. But if it's somebody, let's say it's a realtor who's asking about a certain piece of property, they're going to develop or they're selling it to a resident, we lose track of that, and we do actually start putting permits to build that property. They go ahead and put that amount of time that they put into that piece of property on them. Fire system. This is one of the things that people provide confusion on. Fire system, also the garbage assessment. The fire assessment, any monies that we receive over and above what we are charging for fire services goes into the restricted. And that restricted account offsets your increases over the years. So let's say that increase keeps going up and up and up, then we can reduce our fire assessment
So we're not seeing a $70,000 windfall each and every year. But as fire services and costs go up, we did see a little bit of an increase this year, and we'll probably see more of an increase next year. That overage helps cover us having to send out letters, doing public notices, and having these hearings for fire protection services. So that is money that just goes into a restricted reserve. Our Orange County Public Schools agreement, that's still ongoing, Chief.
I finally just signed the contract. 57.5 this year and 60 next year for the 2 years.
Is that what this is about?
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that amount of money.
I'm sorry, no, we're not. 57 and then another 11,000.
Okay, so it's 68,000. Okay, so this number will go up, and again, it's going to be offsetting for the option that we put over at the school is here's the solid waste assessment as it currently stands. And again, the fire assessment, and other municipalities, when you go to the county, your park, and contracts, you know, there's a 10% allocation in that assessment that pays for staff's time, you know, billing, you know, phone calls, and so forth. So since 2018, there's only been, I believe, 2 real increases for the CPI and press budget. And I remember that they didn't do one because of the fact that it was the pandemic. And they were bidding out for renewal of their contract. But we're at the point now, with a 4.18% increase that we're requesting, we're past the point that we can't afford that 6% without us spending additional monies out of the general fund. So that's why you have that 4.18% this year, but they have had assessment increases in the past. We also have to look at the cost benefit analysis. We have to send out all the notices, all calls, and the typical fee from any. So this one, you know, it's coming at a horrible time for that industry, at a horrible time for them politically, which we'll see will happen on next Tuesday night. You can see the increase in the absent sales tax and so on and so forth. The 2 anomalies, and this comes into what we're talking about when we talk about our reserves. Like some questions I've received, well, if you take the 10 million, 10.4 million, and you look at the 1.2 that you're gonna have left over in reserves, it's gonna be 13%, as opposed to what you're saying is gonna be closer to the 20 to 24%. It's because we have these anomalies this year that we're not gonna see in upcoming years. So that bumps up and inflates your budget to where it's not a normal budget. You're not gonna see that next year or the year after that, unless there's more bailouts or anything else. But with this additional 812,760, that's at $2 million. But our sweet spot's usually at about $7 million when it comes to our budgets that we see back here in 21 and 22. So that's what we use to kind of figure out what we're going to be doing for our reserves. You can see that there's in that 745 right there from the ARPA funds. So again, the ARPA funds, the revenue balances out the remaining revenues for the listed projects. We do have about $1.2 million left, or actually $1.5 million left in that restricted fund. The federal appropriations, the SRCC across the school program, that's a 760. That is again an anomaly for this year. PDS is the 80-20 split, so it's whatever we show as a revenue is going to be paid for. So if it goes to $300,000, again, we're only going to get 20% of that. Rent may be impacted. It all depends on what we do at town hall once that assessment is completed. I did increase the amount of that assessment to $35,000. I think Councilmember Williams, Thomas Drew, and John were part of. We did an RFQ and it came in or something like that. We're not address that now. But it came in pretty high.
Yeah, it came in at a project cost of $150,000 to design and $1.5 million to refurbish. So we're going back out to ensure that we stay under CCNA requirements, which is 35,000 or below. You have to be below 35,000, then you don't have to do a formal bid.
Right. And we have enough great minds in this town that would be willing to underneath that CCNA amount of $35,000. But I did in this budget put in the $35,000. General revenues and stormwater revenues, they'll both be utilized for the hazard mitigation grant projects that we have as a local match, which is 25%. And then we're still going after grants, through Healthy West Orange. We did talk to Orange County EPD today, where they have granted us through the Butler Channel Lakes Advisory Committee, $75,000 to do a revamped stormwater study. So they kick in $75,000, we kick in a certain amount of money, balance that, so we can do an entire basin study again to get us back on par with our original basin study that I think was done in 2006 or 2007. But again, here's the highlights that I already went over was, we were paying $682, we had 3% COLA, so that's just adding in about $20,000. A new hit this fiscal year would be the 327 for the new facilities, and that is for the 20-year term. The Main Street loan, the debt service is going to expire October 1 of 2024, so you will start seeing a recoup of that. So even though we are draining into our reserves for this fiscal year, as you know, with the charter and the restrictions of that charter, I can't take loans out for some projects that are over about $600,000, which means that we're pretty much handcuffed for any project unless we start building up our reserves. So that's why when you see $1.92 million for our reserves over that 24% threshold, it's good to have that because of that charter restriction. You don't have to go to the voters to get those certain projects done. And with this budget, we did adhere to your commitment of the $25,000 for the Parks and Recreation CIP, the $152 for the Water Master Plan. That's actually going into the ARPA funds for potable water systems. The $130 was the middle plan that's going to be tacked on to the $760 for the Safe Across the School. And again, we're part of the Healthy West Orange Alliance, and we're hoping to get part of that $5 million to offset either our portion or to add on to design of the balance once we acquire one more property to get us to downtown. 100,000 again, in sidewalk repairs, you have that budget next year, and that $400,000 is included in the streets and roads CIP as part of our portion of that 25% of those HMGP grants. And 50,000 is going to be allocated for the pavement management plan for Sarah. So the legislative budget, which is your budget, you're coming in over by about $1,021. Special events, that's where you see a lot of the expenditures and revenues. CT, successful events that we have each and every year, they bring in around $200,000. Scaled back this year, but foundation and a lot of other charitable organizations in this area, and on the money, and really appreciate all the work of business staff, because that's money in, money out. So whatever they bring in is what we show as a expenditure. This goes for a reserve that only we've had it on course today. I think that we had our first on course today last year. Free. Just that's offered to town council. See, part of it, it's always in May every year. We had over in May of this last year because of maybe one person. But if you ever want to do that, it's a great experience, a great way to educate yourself not only on police officers, but also, just meeting families and seeing the faces of those, how many families and faces that you see at those events, and it's how much and how deep. Communications, and this goes with every department. It's a new part of the administration department now. It's easier to budget now than a little bit before. Not only just being budgeted for, okay, general maintenance, you have some hours. And then over that, you have to pay. So they might sit there for 5 hours and upload 6 or 7 computers, and then not give them more time. And just to add an additional piece of software that you take them on their own. So we were getting that moving done by the previous company. This one's a flat rate. So no matter how many times I call them, it's a flat rate of $204. And that's as many devices that I have. One time you'll see an increase. We just added better Wi-Fi for the town. Usually, next council meeting, we're using them to get better cell service in town. As a lot of you know, I have one outside every time you call. It's really not the best way to do it. But, that's why we, again, we need better services, have a better way to push it. And I mentioned one of those companies that I think has really enhanced our services, but also other communities. So administration, our budget, again, overtime is because we've taken on, typically with overtime, what we do is we offer the employee, we say, okay, listen, we take in the comp time, or we pay you overtime. Either way, it's something you learn to have. So with this, because we've taken over the admin of food trucks, we either have Diane or
Teresa.
They've been taking over that, so we've seen an increase in that service, and that's really good. Again, with FICA, Medicaid, retirement, for retirement, or just going over the current benefits that employees get. Employees get EAP, that's Employee Assistance Program, so that if they need some counselor, legal advice, anything like that. They get a certain allocation, and that's $3,500 a year from time. For retirement, for non-sworn employees, which is versus civilians, we get 10% of our salary put into a plan. And again, the vesting goes over 6 years. For law enforcement officers, it's 19%, which is equal to what the rest is. And that keeps us competitive not only with our salaries, but also with the benefits packages and officers. Health insurance, we're getting into how much we pay right now. We're looking at about a 6.7% increase this next fiscal year. I do believe that's going to go down. Not to say that let's just say our pool might be getting better for some retirement. Chief retiring, our group gets a little bit.
The average age goes down a little bit.
Anything else there? Yes.
Younger.
For professional services, that is a salary slate. As you know, we just revamped our professional rules and regulations. As part of that, we want to make sure that it requires every 5 years we do an assessment of our salary and that's what we give it to ourselves. We'll try that's it's always good to have a third party. This time we show associations with somebody else. This one will be a third party, so it's going to be going down because I'm not saying that we're being super a lot less, we're utilizing a lot, or having a lot less, but because of the communication, because of the stuff that we have been doing, we have and we're not having to get into litigation over because we are settle or negotiate prior to it. Courthouse issue, but wait until August 10th to see what happens. But when that means that we get that money back. And those some transport fees that again, what it sounds like it's always. BCU chip that we have here at $8,000. That's all item related, and that's the $200 per employee per department. Also does the servers, the licensing software for all the departments. So it's just easy to build out online as opposed to getting. So again, for the health insurance, this is what we pay annually for employee, and then we apply it into the plan for the spouse and family. With that 6.7%, it would take us over that 10,000. That is something that we can probably talk about at, I would say the September council meeting, where do you want to have? You know, it's a month, usually we're looking at 9 to 14% increases, but we still don't want to be providing more benefits than what is industry standard for private companies. So we need to take a look at, okay, is that 9,666 equal to what you would get at Universal, Disney, somewhere else, municipalities? So we want to make sure that we're on par, so nobody can come in here and say, well, you're getting golden parachutes to all these, you know, public employees. It's great to be them, but we want to make sure that we're prepared with them and do that prior to us having open enrollment. But again, I was surprised that it only came in at 6%, and we're looking at 0% increase in our dental insurance, vision insurance, accidental dismemberment and death. Haven't used the dismemberment yet.
Close, very close.
And again, for the salaries, we did do the 3% increase for employees, and that trickles down to like a net time. Clerk's budget, again, our professional services, we saw a reduction because of we're not having to hold a lot of documents at a separate storage facility. We're able to do that in-house now. And I always tell people when we first got here, our storage facility was one of the bathrooms back, both the bathrooms that were back here, as well as bathrooms back in Building B. That was in the former town facilities. And we did see a lot of reduction in, we see the communications, we see reduction in everybody's budget. And in advertising, we're seeing that going down as well. We're not big enough to take advantage of what was just passed, I don't think, for the advertising requirements when it comes to ordinances and stuff like that, or land use zoning. That's mostly for larger communities that have, you know, huge websites, a lot of, even though we have a big website, we have a lot of outreach. We're not big enough for that yet, so we still have to advertise in a newspaper of local distribution, whatever they call it. But she's coming in at less than 12,745. If we don't have an election again, we're going to save that money. We're in an off year next year. The year after that, we'll probably be the same as the primary, and we would save money coming in. Finance budget and salaries, professional services. That is the fee for our lead out there for audit services. The only way that it would increase for this fiscal year, when you utilize federal funds, just the ARPA funds, you have to do a separate audit. And that's coming in probably an additional would be $3,000 to $5,000. So if and when we're at that point, we'll have to do that, but I'll be sure to get that. Fire restricted reserves, you can see that is an increase in the swings that we should reserve. If we're still able to stay at that 3% COLA with COE, then we can reduce the assessment, which again doesn't have to be noticed. So we would love to notice, but unless you're increasing something, you don't have to notice. But it's something that we'll definitely put in there. And the utilities increase not only because we have more cable, we have more stuff over at the new facilities, but also the increase of the Willows MST, which is on the meeting for next Tuesday. So that was, once we annexed them in, the developers agreement, or an annexation agreement, that was one of the things that they committed to as a development with Orange County, so it just transitioned to us. So they have to pay for their own street lights. The reason I say the annexation agreement is because there was no annexation agreements that were completed when those annexations occurred. Typically, you do that to make sure everybody knows who's paying for what, so you're not having to fight over whose sidewalk is this, who road is this, and take care of this home. General insurance, that went up $85,000 because of workers' comp. They've seen that over the industry. We utilize preferred government insurance trust. That is the Florida League of Cities. So for small potatoes like us, we utilize them for those services. But I'm hoping that that will come down with some of the additional negotiations that we have. We're actually meeting with them, I think, next week. So hopefully that'll be a reduction. Everything else is pretty much standard. Again, here's the solid waste. The difference is $7,100, but that puts us over what we're currently spending. Again, communications due to admin, rental and leasing that increased. Oh, sorry, the rental and leasing. It's up $1,800. That is for critical swipes because we're too much cashless. That makes it easier for us to reduce some volume and you know, people counting in, counting out every Tuesday, whether it be Teresa, Lori, Diane. It's just much easier. Question services increased PRP, celebration with the those increase. Workers' comp level, the utilities increases. Public works budget. Again, here's the 216,145 that will go away after 2024. And you debt services will have to be able to use build up your reserves if you want to, or to be utilized for additional projects if and when they come up at that time. Professional services is going up as well. What was happening is you had billings for our project meetings or miscellaneous meetings that we have, and I have to look at the actual spreadsheet to do an actual breakdown. But we have seen some increases in that, not only for John is given his time, we include a billion review for Kindle or associates that have miscellaneous, so split that between stormwater and with and I believe that this includes the 35,000 for the town hall assessment. Here's your big number right here, the $1,000,000. And again, that is, we'll talk about later. Rents and leasing went down because again, we're not having this lease to temporary facilities. The water design is going into the worker. Facility, and that was the public works facility. Here you see ARPA funds. That is the balance, which does include the work design fee. Because that work design fee, but that money was good for the work systems anyway, so we put that in the line. And then what the bill cap is the 950, which is the 150 and 760. That's what the cost is, the district, the path also. So you see, because of the ARPA funds and the page A, that's miscellaneous, that's project meetings, miscellaneous, John's given his general engineering services, building oversight, janitorial, lawn maintenance, lake maintenance. And here, that was in the question services. So, biggest cost that we saw. We are increasing our gas budgets. Miscellaneous increase as well because our guys don't want to do it anymore. They're just not happy with what it was this past year. We'll do a better job of finding a better vendor, but our guys are ready to put in the lights. It is the rainy season, and roads and making getting out and doing stuff that makes the general populace happy as opposed to too long. Partner safety and the payment management plan, which we're doing every 5 years. Even though I know our what they call the ratio is going to be over 90%. But the amount of payments that we've done, what we've already done, it's going to be through the roof and star against the here's the ARPA fund breakdown. So the town put about a little over 1.7 million from the American Recovery Act bill. We spent $211,000 this month for the water design, cost revenues. Then that essential work for 1% pay. The balance of that is going to go towards funding those water systems that are alongside the HOP. The reason that recommendation is there, we have 3 years to spend this money. And it's better, in my opinion, to do it when construction is already occurring at those locations. So with that's involved in West Lake Avenue, it just only made sense to, either the guessing either be done at around the same time as to get the one lump sum figure to not only do construction of the stormwater system, but also the road project. So hopefully with that, combining of those projects, I think anticipated, but this is our fair share, which is 75%. Again, we need and the balance of that will come over the added revenues, and it's going to balance the same millage rate, reserves for the balance of that. Well, we have 100% design actually, so actually was just approved. Actual design, I would have to get back to you. We have existing systems like this, but that has to be upsized in order to require the protection. And to make sure that we're all as far as town water and percentage, same thing with wastewater, in Estancia and east. And we are trying to work with Orange County and the state to get funds to hopefully pay for a wastewater study, just like we did with the water utility master. Stormwater road projects and the HMGP grants for the town's percentage. You can see it here, and it totals about $1.77 million. We're utilizing some of the stormwater fees. Again, with stormwater, you're only generating about $136,000 per project. Everything else is going to operations, maintenance of those systems that you currently have in place. Ergo, that's why we're going to be doing that new study of the entire basin area to see, okay, what is the new CIP going to look like, and what are the ancillary costs going to be relative to that new CIP.
So are you saying that out of the 400,000 we budget each year, only about 135,000 is for construction?
Right. The rest is going to, we have one employee coming out of stormwater, and then you have the vacuum truck services, sweeping services, swell maintenance, all of that stuff coming out of that. People always think, again, they see an assessment, they think that we have millions and millions of dollars. When it's all, we only get about $386,000 from that assessment, and put almost half of that towards projects. But every project that you see is over, again, here's 25% of the cost. So even if just imagine if we had to pay 100% of this, we would have to save or increase the rate exponentially to get up to those costs, actually today's costs.
But when we initially established that 400,000, we actually thought it was just going into a reserve, so every time we needed to repay or, what I mean?
Really?
We didn't think about the ongoing.
Oh, yeah.
So that was already being handled.
But yeah, we're still working with DEM on bridging the gap between what's anticipated and the actual costs, because with the increase in cost of construction, then you still have to do cost benefit analysis of, okay, well, does it now still justify the project? And we're able to, because even DEM came back with, well, you're widening Second Avenue, we're like, well, we're not really widening it. We're adding stormwater improvements with the curb, not the curbing, but curbing. But because it is an emergency management grant, it's giving you that added access, so 2 cars can get by, a truck can get by, stuff like that. So all I pretty much needed was a letter from us saying that this is why we're doing it, and go ahead and check that box. We did get our extensions for all of our projects, and that extension is until October 31st of this year. We're hoping they'll be reviewed before that, but again, it's government, and we'll see how that goes.
Robert, these 25% rates for match, are they those estimates? When did we get those estimates?
Last month. Okay. So they're not 6
So
months
they're
old.
not like 24 months ago is what I'm asking.
No,
No.
no, I made sure again. We're hoping.
I didn't think so, but just wanted to double check.
Yeah. And it's probably good, you probably know as well, and this is something we talked about, or Tony talked about. was, there's some projects that are not gonna meet that threshold as far as the cost. and
PCA, yeah.
PCA. So that money's gonna go back into the pot for others to utilize for the increase in costs. Like there was some unanticipated costs that we had with the Butler investing basins. And we're hoping that once the construction is approved, we're able to utilize that in some construction costs. And so that's hopefully the strategy that.
What was the BCA on our projects?
What's that?
What was the BCA on our projects?
It was over 1, which is your good spot.
It was 1.
It was over 1.
It was over, yeah, it's gonna be over 1 for sure.
Yes. And it takes a lot to get that.
Absolutely, and I know better than anybody, and my concern is because we are giving money back. The trickle be, I'm not seeing any of the money flow back out. I hear the same thing you hear, hopefully that's what we're gonna see.
Yeah.
But we'll have to keep working and keep the pressure on that, so.
Yeah, we've had, I would say probably at least 2 group meetings with the person that determines the BCA. And they have said that if we are close to even being underneath the 1, they would work with us in getting 1. Because now they've added in, I think it was mental stress or something else in there. So we're more than happy to work with them on, loss of furnishings. They have a set number for hotels, again, we're in Orlando, so that cost should be higher than some other jurisdictions. But they said that right now, I think we're probably at that 1, but if possible, up a little bit higher, we're gonna have to work with the, get it back up there. Right. Multi-middle path, again, total cost $950, $760 coming from the federal government, the city across the schools, and then the additional balance will come out of additional revenues and for the reserves. But we're working with Healthy West Orange, and they have $5 million that they're utilizing. But that is moving a lot slower than I would hope, because now we're having more, I think we have 6 committees now.
Yes.
For various things, and they're more focused on education right now rather than actually getting projects done. So at our next meeting, I think our city manager will be on that, and also tomorrow we'll meet with the various managers of the stabilization program, which is. So unfunded projects at this time, I know I said in the April meeting that we would probably be able to do a raise for our master plan this year. That's going to have to probably kick off only 50% for next fiscal year, unless we can Orange County. So if that money will be out there, then we have to see if we can get that money. And there's also other associates and also the wage trend, but then identifying what our needs, what the estimates that we can go after, so we're not wasting our time with certain grants. And also see if we have a study, have a justification, and have a story that we can tell elected officials, then we'll sort of telling them why we just don't do that. Again, they tell you the first time you actually get notice, every time they'll say the first time or state appropriations. Those are being paving, doing that in. Just got the stamp for, we just got approval from understanding utilities for West Second or Butler, Bessie, and Old Reserve Maine for those open water projects. But if I pay for those designs for the stamps now, so I'm waiting for DEM to actually approve those projects before I stamp. Doesn't make sense for us to spend $20,000 to get that stamp. So definitely keep working with our resources to try to get police department, you see different salaries because of changes that we had. Shift differential, again, so typically everything's being the same. All the insurance at the same amount, but we have savings because certain individuals were not on the plan spouse had. But that is no longer the case, that's why we have the increase, which is actually one person. That's not. Again, the RSP would be 2,000, which is our 20,000. Rental leasing, this went down because we paid it all, the majority of the vehicles that we have, but we are still adding the additional car. And it's going to be leasing rods. Now, a decoy car, and I think it's hard to get the location at this point. But I didn't get that from my friend saying, "Please probably stop." I stopped. But, you know, it's good to have a car that moves around, and then, Kansas, his car is a Memorial car. Say that as a Memorial car?
We'll probably maybe keep the hood, we'll think about just replacing the hood, sell the car, maybe use that, we can put that in the history museum.
Training increased. The total year for this was year $2,000. Shift approach. Look at it, you know, I saw sometimes we have. It's good to tell when there's achievement of regulation. You know, there's no union, there's no, you know, complaints or anything like that. If you ask for something more, the officers of the county, and when we rely on the ship, incentive to pay, you see it in nursing, you see the where you get that additional pay for being in nursing. One, it, you know, gives them that additional bump for night shift because she does like to keep fluctuating as opposed to the same A or B shift being on nights. But it also gives them incentive to stay on. Affiliate.
Officers the ability to stay on night shift.
Yeah, things kind of change, you know, we were fortunate that we had several officers for a while that wanted to do that, and then as some of them left, no longer, so we have to rotate, and let's be honest, you know, when you already spent 20, 25 years, you really don't want to do the next shift anymore, I wouldn't want to do it. And we were really one of the only ones that didn't have shift differential anymore, so it's an extra $1.50 an hour, midnight shift, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So hopefully a little incentive, you know, if you have to do that rotation for 2 months, a little bit more money. In the overall budget, it's still only 13 grand. It wasn't that big to do.
Training, that's a reason because we've had to turn over the inside. So go ahead and start training. We had one more vehicle. A lot of the stuff over to Adam. We did see Fusion 360 program, which we adopted by Garden, and it was just as of January of the next fiscal year, they're going to be implementing this program that we don't have a software program. We're not going to be able to do what we need to do as far as dispatch. So they actually went to Baton Rouge, in regard to take a look at how this program works, and then implementing that. So one, make sure that the dispatch fee was increased. Radio for capital improvement. Radios need to be replaced. That's something they can usually plan for. Weapons and holsters. Again, we reach that level where we start replacing and making sure that whatever we have is standard. Sort of individuals that we can give our funds to, and it's typically a buyback program.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, we've been very frugal. Some of you remember on council, 3 years ago, we actually went down to the radio shop and we ascertained probably about 15 radios that were gotten rid of by OPD and everybody else. These are pretty much on their last leg. And so we've kicked that can down the road about as far as we can. They're about $5,500 per radio. So what my plan right now is we had done that a couple of years in a row, and then Jason did a really good job. We acquired all this stuff, but now we're at the point where we probably do 2 a year. hopefully keep up, maybe in about 3 years down the road, we may have to, this may be a capital expenditure that we may have to. Otherwise, they just won't work. Huh?
$5,500.
Yes,
The handhelds.
these radios are 5,500 piece. Yeah. Right, well, as of last year. In 3 or 4 years, they'll probably be 6,000 a year.
Having purchased those radios before, that's why I asked the question.
Yes.
$10,000.
It's only 2 radios.
Right.
My phone was 11,000.
I have a question on the fire assessment. I didn't even realize it for some reason before, but the expense is only 683,000 this year.
Correct.
And we're the revenue is 785. We know you're accumulating for next year's bump, but isn't that like accumulating for maybe 5 or 6 years bump?
Yeah, that's why, once we had the new homes get on the assessment, we saw that huge increase in that bump as far as required reserve. So it's not based
So
on.
it didn't double just because you're building up. There's also,
Yeah, you see that right here, you saw that huge increase.
right,
So if you didn't have anything additional, we would probably take in about a little bit more than this. And the increase was about, I said like 26 or $20,000. So that would, again, cover, but again, with this amount of money coming in, we definitely have to review the assessment for next fiscal year. We would do so.
okay,
But yeah, it comes out of the finance for the restricted reserve. It comes out of police because it's public safety as far as the expenditures. You have one that's going into a savings account and one that's going to actually direct the case. That makes sense. Yes, restricted reserve we put into finance because it's going to a bank account. And then the expenditure comes out of police because it is for public safety. 60. So, again, the radios and shift the bridge. Development services budget, professional services, this is planning and zoning. If we were to hire just one person, with the salary fringe and everything that goes along with it, you know, that is a steal for the amount of money that we're getting with Brad's entire team. With the rains that we had last night, I was getting a text message this morning, so was Tanya, and an issue that was already occurring. Brad already had communicated with guys 12:01 a.m. So he is trying on the spot, and I really can't. I mean, for anything, he is on there, he's on top of it. And it's great that I have a great relationship with him, and we'll talk that company's going into Town of Windermere. And then building inspection fee, that's 8% of what our anticipated revenue is going to be. So again, if that jumps up to, 300,000, then we're looking at about 235,000 for expenditures. Committees and boards, instead of me just going to every single committee and having them, which everybody understands how hard it is to get some of these committees to agree on projects, on stuff, we typically just keep them exactly the same as they were in the years past. Because money that they bring in is money that's going to go out. So if they make more money than we spend, then that's going to go into their reserve. And if it's money that they overspend, then it's coming out of the reserves as well. So, and then when we do a budget reconciliation in November, they'll show that difference in those. But that's why you see pretty much everything staying the same. One difference. The elders committee, I had an additional $1,000 because they want to hold, I think more events, maybe bingo or something like that. So you can remember $1,000. Stormwater, again, you have an employee coming out of that. Professional services, they went up $75,000 against that cost. But the stormwater project costs, as you see, actually it was 154 in 2021, it was 112 last year, and it's only 78,000 this year. But that is because we're putting money away, and here's our matching grant, $75,000 for that master stormwater plan. So that's a benefit of $75,000 from Ocean Lakes Advisory Committee, and we've been the other 75 actually on that study. And again, professional services, KJ, Laura, John, MPDS, we being vacuuming, and now we've added soil maintenance. Total that we receive each every year from our stormwater assessments through the and it's based on the floor area that you have. So revenues over expenditures, here's how much you're bringing in, here's how much you're spending, and here's the delta right here, 663.5. If we were to use on the revenue numbers, that'd probably be more like $650,000. It's so close right now that you see whatever revenues going to be. So that 663 is helping you offset the cost for the HMP grant and the funds. So you'll need to tap into reserves, and then we've done this one other time since I've been here. Take a look at the reserves. When I first got here, it was 341,000, and we're able to get it up to about 161. First that came into town, that wasn't covered. Also, we did Park Avenue in the school. East End. So that's the only time that we really did reserve ever since to avoid that issue. So by utilizing the reserves, you're not just throwing that 663 away. You know, the value that you're getting for that amount of money that you're paying is going to be well over that $4 million. You know, those are projects, again, as I said before, your stormwater assessment is never done. It's 25%. That's something that $400,000 either, unless you build those funds up, which is the reason why our reserves are that. When you take that 1.923, it'll drop down to about 1.265, and you can base that off of maybe $7 million budget, $5 million budget. But based on what we have for this fiscal year, we're close to that 20%. Right now, it's about 18%. If our work is good, what we have in reserve right now, I think we have 20% next fiscal year. And as we go, it's not like we're tapping into CIP is based on grants or something else that we receive. Again, the charge, you have to save that money as opposed to once we hit that 24 to 25%, so reducing our millage rate, we don't do that because so again, it shows your reserves throughout the years. And 10, it was reduced because of the Main Street and Society.
We did have a lot of matching funds come out during those time periods. We're just kind of getting into the grant. Is that your recollection? Matching funds were like, they were taking them all from the schoolhouse there and all that. Yeah, good times.
But does everybody understand that the $10 million that you're showing on revenue, that it's very unusual this year. The real budget, maybe 7.5, 8. That's why I
My comment to Robert was on this 1.6 number for reserves was that discussion, but not voting on that part. If we're not able to achieve some forgiveness, which would be sure.
we talked
For some
about
of
that.
that, so we need to manage that carefully if that's comes through.
I think that's my question. Like,
much more, but you can anticipate that cost being probably around $2,000. And if so, then that's going to drop you know, close to that $1 million or $1 million mark, which is going to drop you down probably close to that 13%. Have you been there before? Absolutely. See right here, and the hurricanes didn't have a big impact, but when you start trying to do projects, that's what you're so much, or you just plant those in later fiscal years. You really take it out of the rest of the year or something else, then yeah. But that was something I didn't anticipate this fiscal year because before July 1st, required to give you 90 days notice of budget. So that was something I didn't anticipate this.
Robert, refresh me on the older Main Street paving. Council approving for bridge to second. Is that that's the portion we're discussing, that 280,000.
That's, you saw that the cost for the first. That is from West Second Avenue to the canal. It's not including any of the paving else.
Right.
And every resident that we talk to about doing those public workshops is 100%. That is a huge mud wall. It's also you know, it's always someone's always on one property that is holding out. I wouldn't say holding out because it's so hard to get communication. So once we acquire that additional property, then we're able to shift everything 15 feet to the east and still accommodate everything. Still going 100% of that. So it's not like the spots.
Yeah, in my recollection, didn't have that as being such a big number, but so at some point, probably 2 years ago. So, you know, so one of those, that's probably escalated. The other thing that we can do is, you know, if we needed to be a little cautious or move things around a little bit, it could be wise to do our assessment on this particular building, and then with some hope that maybe some of the costs will come down over time. We might be able to push that a little bit as well. You got to be careful not to push it too far, as you will know. But also, this is the whole reason. I mean, there's still, you know, every municipality still has a big chunk of these ARP funds out there, and that's the money on the street that's driving a lot of the inflation and a lot of the demand for labor and storm water projects as well as other projects.
You have that 3-year window to do that. Do I think you're going to give extensions? Probably, but I'm not going to count on them. And in all honesty, when we do the assessment of this facility, I can see just getting everybody in agreement on what to do with the facility. It's going to take more than a and a lot of public input, a lot of So I don't see that happening next fiscal year, but the assessment, just from an engineering or construction standpoint, they can say, okay, listen, here's what actually needs to get to where it is today.
Phase it, right?
Yes.
It sounds pretty cool.
But again, including this isn't really either because that's 100% coming out of Rotary and Health West Orange, except for the third party review that we're having done. But the 3 motions that I need tonight, and again, I added this by accident because we had the same ones last year because we weren't increasing anything. But we're increasing talking about that solid waste assessment. Lot clearing, typically have that done prior to meeting the budget that's on the same resolution as solid waste. And the Willows street lighting, that has increased because our costs increased on that. So the only 3 motions I need tonight is to keep the millage rate at 3.7425 and a motion to consent to a balanced budget. Now, is this going to be the actual number that you see at the hearings? Probably not. We may go down a little bit, may go up a little bit. But you want to kind of stay at or around that number. And again, if you pass this 3.7425 mils per thousand, you want to go down. You can't go up. And then also we need a motion to set the date and time of these two hearings. And the reason that we have separate hearings for these, the budget is you can't have the same hearing date as the school board of Orange County. You have to have it separate, and you want to have some fluff time too, in case something happens at one of those hearings that comes up as a huge on. And that's why we have these two on the 7th and 19th.
Do the motions have to be 3 months, I mean, you can't do it rapid.
No, it has to be individual motions for each one of these. So the first one need to be motions to tentatively adopt the proposed motion 3.7425 mils.
Make a motion to tentatively adopt proposed millage rate 3.7425 mils per thousand.
Motion by Councilor Rose, second by, I believe, Andy. Just before we move forward, council, any further questions, comments on the proposed military? Or budgetary questions? See, none, we'll begin voting with our motion making. Aye. Council, next up, will need a motion to consent to the balance proposed budget of revenues $10,411. Sorry, $10,411,209, and expenditures of $10,411,209.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to set the balance proposed budget, revenues of $10,411,209, expenditures of $10,411,000.
I'll second.
So motion by Councilperson Diane, second by Councilperson Muskie. Further comments or discussion? Seeing none, we'll begin voting with Councilperson Williams.
Aye.
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 Last year's much harder to say that, it was all sevens.
Yeah.
You guys remember the 7,770,000,
Yeah. It's pretty hard to say.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Next up, council, we will set a motion to set date, time, and place of budget hearings for September 7th, 2022, 6 p.m. Tentative budget hearing here at Windermere Town Hall, 520 Main Street, Windermere, Florida, 34776. For the second September 19th, 2022, at 6 p.m. Windermere Town Hall, 520 Main Street.
Motion to approve.
Comments or discussion, council? Seeing none, we can go with Councilperson Williams. Aye. Council, any other items for discussion?
We want to thank staff, Nora, Tara, Teresa, Diane, Dorothy, Tanya, Chief, Molly. It takes a village to create a budget like this. They always come in with needs, not wants. And we never get into argument relative to a lot of other line items. So it's just a great family that we're working with.
Any additional items for consideration?
Park.
Lake Street.
Lake Park.
Lake Street Park.
I just wanted to put it out for what it's worth. Don't be inside to build $200,000 or spend $200,000 on this. I think we need to consider other options. And I also think that we have to remember that we don't own these lakes. You know, these are state, county lakes, and we're very privileged to be able to live by them and get easy access to them. And I know that a lot of people that don't live here think of us as being elitist in our thoughts about the use of these lakes. And publicity would be less than what we would like. So before we jump right in there, maybe we could think of other options as in increase, steady police presence just during those 1 or 2 days a week and those hours that the kids are causing havoc there. That's cheaper. And I think it could be effective. If we needed to remove a roof, it keep them off of it, reduce their liability. All those things are doable, and I think maybe more concerted efforts would be less expensive. And they're not, like I said, they're not our lakes. And people that live around there, they knew they were buying near it. They knew people were gonna use it. So I just want everybody to think about it. Does it seem like a done deal to me before? And in my mind, it is. Oh, I thought we were allowed to.
But the problem is it wasn't. So I don't want, okay, we're having a meeting.
Right, yeah, you're right.
Well, we can have that discussion at the next council meeting. And I think, and maybe possibly what I would encourage everyone to do is to go back to the workshop that we had. The workshop that we had where we discussed, the means and modes, what we're gonna put into effect there.
2016.
No, it was the original one.
Third.
Farther back.
The third eye.
Probably a year ago.
Oh, a year ago.
The measured approach. Yeah, right, we talked about a measured approach and some of those things. We had some of these conversations. I would just encourage everybody to go back, listen to that, and also to go down there and spend some time down there. On the weekend, so you have a good idea of what's current, so.
Okay, good. I didn't know about that.
No, it's okay, because we would have to put it on the agenda. We can certainly have additional conversations and discussion. Any further questions or anything, Council? Staff reports or anything? Thank you, Chief, for a great job on sending Detective Allen into retirement.
Thank you.
5-way for the most part. And I'm glad to be able to participate. He's definitely made us better. And that legacy will continue. Great schools.
Thank you guys for showing up. It means a lot.
Yeah,
Everybody else told us.
Oh.
Well, for the first time in his career, John was speechless.
I don't believe it.
You could see it. I think you could see everything just hit him at once.
Yeah,
This is really happening.
It's good. It's a big career and a big transition for him. Wish him all the best this year. Seeing no further items, we will close our Windermere, Town of Windermere workshop.